I remember those days like they were yesterday. Mom, Dad, and me, Megan, the perfect little family. We weren't rich or famous, just ordinary folks living our best life. Dad worked as an accountant, always buried in numbers, but he'd light up when he got home. Mom was a teacher, spreading knowledge and kindness wherever she went. We'd spend weekends exploring the country, piling into our beat-up station wagon and hitting the road. Dad would blast his favorite oldies, and Mom would sing along, terribly off-key but not caring one bit. I'd sit in the back, rolling my eyes but secretly loving every minute of it. Those road trips were the best. We'd stop at dingy diners, ordering greasy burgers and sharing a giant milkshake. Mom would always steal my fries, claiming, "I'm just testing them for poison, sweetie." When we weren't traveling, we'd hit up the local mall. I'd drag them from store to store, trying on ridiculous outfits and begging for the latest toys. Mom was the voice of reason, but Dad was a softie. He'd slip me a few extra bucks when Mom wasn't looking, whispering, "Our little secret, Meggie." Friday nights were pizza nights. We'd order in, sprawl out on the living room floor, and watch cheesy movies. Dad would try to explain the plots, Mom would shush him, and I'd stuff my face with pepperoni, not caring about anything but the moment. I was 11 when Mom started feeling tired all the time. At first, we didn't think much of it. Teaching is exhausting after all. But then came the doctor visits, the worried whispers, the hushed phone calls. I didn't understand what was happening. Nobody told me anything, but I could feel the change in the air. The laughter became less frequent, the road trips stopped, and pizza nights were replaced with quiet, tense dinners. One night, I overheard Dad on the phone, his voice cracking as he spoke. "The treatments aren't working, Mike. I don't know what we're going to do." That's when I knew. Something was very wrong with Mom, and our perfect little world was about to shatter. I wish I could go back to those happy days, freeze time, and stay in that bubble of blissful ignorance forever, but life doesn't work that way. The storm was coming, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. For now, I close my eyes and try to remember the good times. The smell of Mom's perfume, the sound of Dad's laughter, the taste of Friday night pizza. Those memories are all I have left of the life I once knew, the life I desperately wish I could return to. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because it was pizza night, but there was no pizza, no laughter, no Mom. Just silence and the horrible beeping of hospital machines. "Megan, sweetie," Dad said, his voice cracking. "Mom, she's gone." Just like that, my world collapsed. Mom, my rock, my best friend, was gone. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I just stood there, numb, as Dad hugged me, his tears soaking my hair. The next few weeks were a blur of black clothes, hushed voices, and casseroles I couldn't bring myself to eat. I kept expecting Mom to walk through the door, to tell me it was all a bad dream. But she never did. Then, about 6 months after we lost Mom, something changed. Dad started going out more. I thought he was getting better, until I saw her. She was tall, blonde, and nothing like Mom. Her name was Karen, and she had a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Megan, this is Karen," Dad said, looking nervous. "We've been seeing each other." I couldn't believe it. Mom wasn't even cold in her grave, and he was already replacing her. Karen bent down, her face inches from mine. "Hi, Megan. I've heard so much about you." When Dad wasn't looking, Karen's smile dropped. Her eyes turned cold, calculating. In that moment I knew. This woman was trouble. Over the next few weeks, Karen was everywhere. She'd come over for dinner, watch TV with us, even try to help me with homework. But the moment Dad's back was turned, the mask would slip. "Listen, kid," she hissed one day when we were alone. "I'm here to stay. Don't get any ideas about messing this up for me." I tried to tell Dad, I really did, but he just shook his head. "Megan, I know this is hard for you, but Karen's a good person. You're just jealous. Maybe we should get you to talk to someone." Jealous? I couldn't believe it. My own father thought I was making this up. Before I knew it, I was sitting in a therapist's office, being told I had adjustment issues and difficulty with change. Karen had somehow convinced everyone, Dad, our relatives, even the neighbors, that I was troubled. Poor Megan, I'd overhear her saying on the phone, She's having such a hard time. There are mental problems. We're getting her the help she needs. Then came the bombshell. A year and a half after Mom died, Dad dropped the news. Megan, Karen and I, we're getting married. We thought it'd be best if you spent the summer at camp. Give you some time to adjust. But I knew the truth. They were shipping me off so I wouldn't ruin their perfect day with my sour face, as Karen put it. I left for camp with a heavy heart, knowing that when I returned, everything would be different. My home wouldn't be mine anymore. My family was changing, and there was nothing I could do about it. I returned from camp with a knot in my stomach. The house looked the same from the outside, but as soon as I stepped through the door, I knew everything had changed. "Welcome home," Megan Karen said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We need to talk about room arrangements. With the baby coming, we'll need to make some changes." My head spun. Baby? What baby? Dad's face lit up. "That's right, you don't know. Karen's pregnant, you're going to be a big sister." Karen led me upstairs, chattering about nursery colors and baby names. We stopped at my room, or what used to be my room. "We've started converting this into the nursery," Karen said, pushing open the door. My heart sank. My posters were gone, replaced by pastel wallpaper. My desk had vanished, a crib standing in its place. "Where's my stuff?" I managed to choke out. Karen waved dismissively. "Oh, we moved you to the guest room. It's cozier anyway." The guest room was barely bigger than a closet. My things were piled haphazardly on the bed, some boxes still sealed. "This is temporary, right?" I asked, looking at Dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Well, Meggie, with the new baby." I got the message. I was being pushed out, replaced. The next few months were a blur of doctor's appointments, baby showers, and me trying to make myself as small as possible. Karen's belly grew, and with it, her control over our lives. Then, one crisp fall morning, my little brother was born. Despite everything, when I held him for the first time, I felt a surge of love. For a moment I thought maybe things would get better. But Karen had other plans. "Careful, Megan," she'd say, snatching him away. "You might drop him. Or he's sleeping now. Maybe you can see him later." There was always an excuse, always a reason why I couldn't spend time with my brother. Dad was too busy with work and the new baby to notice. Years passed. I threw myself into school, counting down the days until I could leave for college. My brother grew into a sweet, curious kid, but Karen made sure our interactions were limited. Finally, my senior year arrived. One night I overheard Karen and Dad arguing. "She needs to learn responsibility," Karen insisted. "A job right out of high school would do her good." Dad's voice was firm. "No, Sarah wanted her to go to college. We set aside money for it. Megan's going." I'd never been so grateful for my dad standing up for me. When my acceptance letter came, I cried with relief. I was getting out. I was going to start my own life, away from Karen's manipulations. On move-in day, Dad helped me pack the car. Karen and my brother stayed home. "I'm proud of you," Meggie, Dad said, hugging me goodbye. "Your mom would be too." As I drove away, watching my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror, I felt a mix of sadness and hope. I was leaving behind the only home I'd known, and the little brother I never really got to know. But I was also driving towards freedom, towards a future where I could be myself without Karen's shadow looming over me. College was like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make something of myself. Advertising became my passion, a world where creativity met strategy, and I could finally express myself freely. But even as I reveled in my newfound independence, there was always a nagging ache in my heart. My little brother, barely 6 when I left, was growing up without me. During rare visits home, I'd catch glimpses of the amazing kid he was becoming. "Megan, look what I drew," he'd exclaim, showing me his latest masterpiece. I'd ruffle his hair, cherishing these brief moments. "It's awesome, buddy. You're quite the artist." Karen would inevitably interrupt, whisking him away for some urgent task or another. The distance between us grew with each passing year. Graduation day arrived, a bittersweet triumph. As I stood in my cap and gown scanning the crowd, I realized Dad and Karen weren't there. Later, a terse text arrived: "Congratulations on graduating. Dad, Karen." It stung, but I refused to let it dampen my spirits. I had a future to build. Thanks to my internships and portfolio, I landed a job at a hip advertising agency in the city. Grandma Mom's mom and my guardian angel helped me secure a tiny but cozy apartment. "Your mother would be so proud," she said, pressing a check into my hand. "This is for rent. She always wanted you to have a good start." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was challenging but rewarding. I made friends, went on dates, and slowly began to heal from the wounds of my past. For 3 years I lived in relative peace, with only occasional, awkward holiday visits to break the calm. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. "Megan, it's Dad. I have some news. We've sold the house and bought a new place, bigger, more modern. I was hoping. Well, would you help us move? It might be a good chance for us to reconnect." I was speechless. After years of distance, this sudden olive branch felt surreal. "Karen would be happy to see you too," he added, though I doubted that. "And your brother? Megan, he's 12 now. He asks about you all the time." I closed my eyes, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect myself from more hurt, but another part, the part that still missed my family, that longed for reconciliation, won out. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll come." Great Dad's relief was palpable. "I'll text you the address. See you this weekend." As I packed a bag for the weekend, my emotions swirled. Hope mingled with anxiety, excitement with dread. Whatever happened, this visit would change everything. I just didn't know if it would be for better or worse. I pulled up to the address, my jaw dropping at the sight. The house was enormous, all sleek lines and modern architecture. It looked nothing like the cozy home I grew up in. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Dad opened it, a hesitant smile on his face. "Meggie, you made it." "Hi, Dad," I said, stepping inside. Karen appeared behind him, her smile as plastic as ever. "Megan, how? Nice of you to come," she said, her tone suggesting anything but. I looked around, expecting to see my brother. "Where's—" "Oh, he's staying with my parents for the weekend," Karen cut in smoothly. "We thought it would be easier to move without him underfoot." The look in her eyes told me everything. This was deliberate. She'd made sure my brother wouldn't be here, denying me even this small chance to reconnect with him. Swallowing my disappointment and anger, I forced a smile. "So where do you want me to start?" For the next few hours, I threw myself into the work. I scrubbed floors, arranged furniture, and hung curtains. It was easier than trying to make conversation with Dad or enduring Karen's false pleasantries. As I was sorting through some boxes in what would be the study, I came across a pile of framed photos. My heart stopped as I recognized one particular frame. It was a portrait of Mom, the one that used to hang in my childhood bedroom. Her smile beamed at me from beneath a layer of dust. Clutching the photo, I walked into the living room where Dad and Karen were discussing paint colors. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "why is Mom's picture in a pile of junk?" Dad's face fell, a mix of guilt and sadness crossing his features. He opened his mouth to speak, but Karen beat him to it. "Oh, that old thing," she said dismissively. "We decided those photos don't really fit with the new decor. They're a bit superfluous, don't you think?" Superfluous. The word hit me like a slap. My mother's memory, reduced to an outdated decoration. "Superfluous," I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "This is my mother, your wife," I added, looking at Dad. Dad at least had the decency to look ashamed. "Megan, we didn't mean." But I was already moving, gathering up every photo of Mom I could find. I found her old jewelry box, a few of her books. Without a word, I carried them out to my car, ignoring Karen's protests and Dad's weak attempts to explain. As I placed the last item in my trunk, I felt a storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Anger at Karen's callousness, disappointment in Dad's spinelessness, and a deep, aching sadness for the mother I'd lost and the family that seemed beyond repair. I slammed the trunk shut, the sound echoing in the quiet street. For a moment, I considered getting in the car and driving away, leaving this mess behind once and for all. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of Mom, her voice in my head telling me to be strong. Maybe it was the thought of my little brother who I still hadn't seen. Or maybe it was just sheer stubbornness, refusing to let Karen win. Whatever it was, I found myself walking back into the house. Karen was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding to avoid confrontation. Dad stood in the hallway looking lost, so I went back to cleaning, trying not to think about Dad's betrayal. As I was about to leave, Dad caught my arm. "Megan, wait. There's something else." I turned, eyebrow raised. "What now?" He shifted uncomfortably. "We're having a housewarming party in a few days. We would really appreciate your help." Before I could respond, Karen swooped in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Oh yes, Megan, we could really use your assistance. Perhaps you could handle the catering? I'll take care of the cleaning, invitations, and overall organization." I opened my mouth to refuse, but Dad jumped in. "Please, Meggie, all our relatives and friends will be there. We can't manage without you." His pleading eyes wore me down. Despite everything, a small part of me still wanted to make him happy. "Fine," I sighed. "I'll help with the food, I'll even pay for it myself." Karen's smile widened. "Wonderful. We're thinking of an Italian theme. You know, to christen the new kitchen." I nodded, an idea forming. "Actually, I know the best Italian restaurant. I'll order from there. Quality guaranteed." Oh, Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. "What's the name of this restaurant?" Bella Notte replied, watching her carefully. She nodded, looking satisfied. "Sounds perfect. We'll leave it in your capable hands then." As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Karen's sudden agreeableness was suspicious, but I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning the perfect menu. I called my friend Maria, owner of Bella Notte. "Megan, it's been too long," she answered cheerfully. "Hey Maria, I need a favor. My dad's having a housewarming party, and I'm in charge of food. Think you can help me out?" "For you? Anything. What are you thinking?" We spent an hour crafting the perfect Italian spread. Antipasti platters, handmade pastas, tiramisu for dessert, the works. I spared no expense, wanting to prove I could handle this responsibility. After finalizing the order, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Despite everything, a small part of me hoped this party might be a turning point. Maybe, just maybe, we could start to heal our fractured family. The next week dragged by slowly. I kept myself busy with work, but my mind often wandered to the upcoming party. I checked and double-checked the order, making sure everything was perfect. The day before the housewarming party, my phone rang. It was Maria from Bella Notte. "Hey Megan, I'm a bit confused. Your stepmother called yesterday and asked to move the food delivery to today. Did the party date change?" My heart sank. "What? No, it's supposed to be tomorrow." Oh, Maria sounded worried. "Well, I wanted to double-check with you before making any changes." I thanked her, my mind racing. After hanging up, I immediately called Karen, my suspicions on high alert. "Hi Karen, just wanted to confirm the party details for tomorrow," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Oh yes, everything's set for tomorrow at 7 p.m, she replied smoothly. "We're looking forward to it." I thanked her and ended the call, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. It was clear now Karen had tried to change the delivery date behind my back. She wanted me to miss the party entirely. Taking a deep breath, I called Maria back. "Hey, it's me again. I need to cancel the order," I said, my voice tight. "Cancel? But Megan, are you sure? It's a lot of food and it's all paid for." "I know. Keep the payment, consider it a gift. Use the food for the restaurant if you can." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. The betrayal stung, but a part of me wasn't surprised. This was classic Karen, always finding new ways to push me out. The same evening, curiosity got the better of me. I opened my social media and saw my cousin was live streaming from the party. There it was, the housewarming in full swing, happening right now, a day early. I watched, a mix of hurt and anger building inside me, as Karen showed off the new house. She preened for the camera, pointing out design features and accepting compliments from guests. Suddenly a voice off camera asked, "Where's Megan? I thought she'd be here." Karen's face changed, a look of false concern replacing her smile. "Oh, you know Megan, she's always been a bit unsociable. Some mental health issues, poor dear. She said she couldn't make it." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Mental health issues? Unsociable? The lies flowed so easily from her lips. Karen quickly changed the subject, steering the conversation back to the house. "Now, who's ready for some amazing Italian food? It should be here any minute." The guests cheered, and Karen beamed at the camera. Half an hour passed, and I could see the guests starting to look restless. Karen's smile became strained as she kept assuring everyone the food would arrive any minute now. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the live stream. Karen's perfectly crafted facade was crumbling before my eyes. Her smile had become a grimace as she dialed the restaurant's number, the speakerphone amplifying every word for the gathered guests. "Hello, Bellanot. This is Karen. Where is our food order?" The response was clear and devastating. "I'm sorry, Mom, but that order was cancelled earlier today by Megan. There won't be any delivery." Karen's face contorted with rage. "What? That little John," she shrieked, turning to my father. "Call Megan right now." Dad, looking flustered, pulled out his phone. I watched, heart pounding, as he dialed my number. When I answered, his voice boomed through the speakerphone. "Megan, how could you cancel the food order? You've ruined everything." Taking a deep breath, I replied calmly, "Dad, why did you change the date of the housewarming? Why wasn't I invited?" The room fell silent. Dad's face paled as he stammered, "We," Karen said. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Guests exchanged meaningful glances, eyeing Karen and Dad with suspicion. Suddenly Karen snatched the phone from Dad's hand. "You ungrateful brat," she screeched. "After everything we've done for you, you're trying to sabotage us, aren't you?" I let her rant for a moment before speaking, my voice steady and clear. "I think everyone can see now who really has mental health issues in this family. And it's not me." Karen's hysterical shouting filled the room, but I could see the damage was done. Guests were backing away, some already heading for the door. "I'm done being your scapegoat, Karen," I said firmly. "And Dad, I'm done watching you choose her over your own daughter. Goodbye." I ended the call and closed the live stream, my hands shaking but my resolve strong. It was over. The lies, the manipulation, all of it laid bare for everyone to see. In the days that followed, I ignored the barrage of calls and messages from Dad and other family members. I needed time to process, to heal. A week later, Dad showed up at my apartment. He looked haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. "Megan, I'm so sorry," he began. "I've been blind. I let Karen control everything, and I lost sight of what really matters. Please, give me a chance to make things right." I wanted to slam the door in his face, but something in his expression stopped me. "It's not that simple, Dad. You abandoned me. You forgot about me." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "But I want to change. I promise I'll do better. Please, Meggie." Slowly, cautiously, we began to rebuild our relationship. Dad started calling regularly, and we met for coffee every week. He even brought my little brother along sometimes, away from Karen's watchful eye. As for Karen, I heard through the grapevine that she'd become something of a pariah among the family. Her lies exposed, she retreated into a shell of bitterness. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I threw myself into my career, climbing the ranks at the advertising agency. My creativity flourished, fueled by the emotional turmoil I'd endured. I don't know what the future holds for my family. The wounds are deep, and healing takes time. But for the first time in years, I feel hopeful. I'm living life on my terms, pursuing my passions and slowly, carefully, allowing love back into my heart. As I look out at the city lights from my apartment window, I can almost hear Mom's voice. "You're stronger than you know," Maggie she used to say. And you know what? She was right.
My name's Robin, and I had just celebrated my 26th birthday a few weeks ago. Life was good. I was engaged to Jake, my college sweetheart, and our wedding was right around the corner. Everything seemed perfect until my mom decided to throw a wrench in the works. I was lounging on the couch, flipping through a bridal magazine when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I answered with a cheerful, "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "Robin, honey, I need your opinion," she said, her voice laced with excitement. "What kind of suit do you think would look best on Tom when he walks you down the aisle?" "I'm thinking maybe blue, but maybe black is more traditional?" I blinked, confused. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Grandpa's walking me down the aisle." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, "What?" "No, Tom's doing it. He's got a teenage daughter, and he wants to practice. You know, to get a feel for when it's her turn." I sat up straight, my magazine forgotten. "Practice?" "Mom, I'm not some dress rehearsal for your boyfriend's future father of the bride moment. Grandpa's walking me down the aisle, end of story." "But Tom." "I don't care about Tom," I shouted, surprising myself with the intensity of my anger. "I'm not going to be his guinea pig. If he wants to practice so badly, tell him to find some other wedding to crash." "Robin Elizabeth Carter, you listen to me." I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again, but I ignored it, tossing it aside as if it had burned me. As I sat there, my heart pounding, memories started flooding back. Dad's face, his warm smile, the way he used to swing me around in the backyard. He'd died when I was 10, leaving a gaping hole in our lives that Mom had desperately tried to fill. I remembered the parade of men that followed, all truckers from the transportation company where Mom worked. She'd bring them home, introducing each one as the one, her future husband, my future stepfather. But they never lasted long. Mom was intense, clingy. She'd scare them off, and then the next one would appear, another Mr. Right in a never-ending cycle. As I sat there, lost in memories, I couldn't help but remember how I'd sought refuge with my grandparents during those tumultuous years. They were my safe haven, a stark contrast to the chaos at home. I was about 13 when things really started to get out of hand. One day, I came home from school to find Mom in a screaming match with some woman I'd never seen before. "You home-wrecking bitch," the stranger shrieked, her face red with fury. "That's my husband." Mom, never one to back down, fired right back. "He told me he was single. Don't blame me for your marital problems." And there, lounging in our ratty armchair, was Mom's latest boyfriend. I think his name was Dave or Dan. I honestly couldn't keep track anymore. He was watching the two women fight with a smug grin on his face, like it was some kind of twisted entertainment. I stood frozen in the doorway, my backpack slipping off my shoulder. "Mom?" I called out weakly. Both women whirled to face me. The stranger's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Is this your daughter?" she spat at Mom. "Does she know what kind of woman her mother is?" "Leave her out of this," Mom yelled back. Dave Ordand finally stood up. Ladies, he drawled. "No need to fight. There's plenty of me to go around." The stranger let out a strangled scream and lunged at him. I took that as my cue to bolt, locking myself in my room until the shouting stopped. That night, I heard Mom crying through the thin walls of our apartment. Dave Ordan had left with his wife, and Mom was alone again. As I grew older, things didn't get better. By the time I was 15, I was doing everything I could to avoid being home. It wasn't just the revolving door of Mom's boyfriends anymore, it was the way they looked at me. I remember one guy, Rick, eyeing me up and down as I grabbed a snack from the kitchen. "Your girl's filling out nicely," he told Mom. Mom just laughed. "She takes after me," she said proudly, completely oblivious to how uncomfortable I was. I started spending more time at the library, at friends' houses, anywhere but home. But Mom didn't get it. She'd call me selfish for not wanting to hang out with her and her latest flame. "Robin, honey," she said one day, "come meet Jeff. He's great with kids. We could be such a happy family, the three of us." I looked at Jeff, saw the way his eyes roved over me, and felt sick. "No thanks," I muttered, retreating to my room. That night, I called my grandpa. "Can I come stay with you for a while?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "Of course, sweet pea," he said without hesitation. "You're always welcome here." It didn't take long for my grandparents to notice something was wrong. One evening, as we sat around their kitchen table, the words just tumbled out of me. I told them everything, the parade of men, the uncomfortable stares, Mom's obliviousness to it all. By the time I finished, Grandma had tears in her eyes, and Grandpa's face was set in a hard line I'd never seen before. "That's enough," he said, his voice low and firm. "We're putting a stop to this right now." The next day, we drove to Mom's place. Grandpa didn't waste any time. "Carol, what you're doing is immoral and dangerous. You're bringing strange men into your home with a young girl present. Do you have any idea what could happen?" Mom's face flushed red. "How dare you," she shrieked. "You've never wanted me to be happy. You're trying to ruin my life." "Your life?" Grandpa shot back. "What about Robin's life? What about her safety?" "Robin's fine," Mom insisted. "She's just being dramatic." "So what, you're going to take her away from me, is that it?" Grandpa nodded. "Robin's coming to live with us. You can sort out your personal life without putting her at risk." "Fine," Mom spat. "Take her. It'll be easier to find a good man without a teenager cramping my style anyway." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd known, deep down, that Mom saw me as a burden sometimes, but hearing her say it out loud, it hurt more than I'd expected. Grandma squeezed my shoulder. "Go pack your things, sweetie," she said softly. I nodded, heading to my room in a daze. As I threw clothes into a duffel bag, I could hear Mom and Grandpa still arguing in the living room. When I came back out, Mom was standing by the door, arms crossed. "So this is it, huh?" she said. "You're choosing them over me?" I looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time. She seemed smaller somehow, more fragile. For a moment, I saw the scared, lonely woman behind the brash exterior. "I'm choosing me, Mom," I said quietly. "I hope someday you'll understand that." She didn't answer, just turned away as I walked out the door with my grandparents. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt safe. Living with my grandparents was like stepping into a different world. Gone were the late-night arguments, the parade of strange men, and the constant tension. Instead, I found myself surrounded by love, stability, and support. I still went to the same school, saw the same friends. But everything felt different. Better. I could focus on my studies without worrying about what, or who, I'd find when I got home. Mom was Mom. She'd call occasionally, usually to talk about her latest boyfriend or to complain about work. She rarely asked about me, and when she did, she didn't seem to really listen to the answers. When graduation day rolled around, I was surprised to see her there. She sat with my grandparents, looking uncomfortable and out of place. "You look nice, honey," she said after the ceremony, giving me a quick hug. "Listen, I've got to run. I've got a date with this great guy I met at work. You understand, right?" And just like that, she was gone. I watched her rush off, feeling a mixture of hurt and relief. My grandparents helped me move into my dorm room that fall, setting me up with everything I needed for college. I'd decided to study to become an investment manager, fascinated by the world of finance and planning. That's where I met Jake. We were in the same introduction to financial markets class, both of us bright-eyed freshmen with big dreams. We became friends first, study buddies who'd quiz each other late into the night at the campus coffee shop. It wasn't until our senior year that things shifted. We were working on a group project, hunched over spreadsheets in the library, when Jake suddenly looked up at me. "Robin," he said, his voice serious, "I think I'm in love with you." I blinked at him, surprised. And then I realized I felt the same way. Our relationship blossomed quickly after that. Jake was kind, smart, and stable, everything I'd never had in my life with Mom. When he proposed after graduation, I didn't hesitate to say yes. I saw Mom a few times during those years, usually when I'd stop by her place during breaks. Her new boyfriend, Tom, was always there, younger than her, with slicked back hair and a cocky grin. "Robin, this is Tom," Mom had said, beaming. "He's got a daughter, 7 years younger than you. Isn't that great?" I'd smiled politely, not sure what to say. Tom had looked me up and down in a way that made me uncomfortable, reminding me of all those boyfriends from years ago. After reliving all these memories, I knew I needed to talk to Grandpa. Jake and I drove out to my grandparents' house one weekend, the weight of Mom's demand heavy on my mind. "Grandpa," I said as we sat in their cozy living room, "Mom called me about the wedding. She wants her boyfriend Tom to walk me down the aisle. Says he wants to practice for when his own daughter gets married." Grandpa reached out and took my hand. "Robin, I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle. But if you wanted to choose Tom or anyone else, I'd understand. It's your day." I shook my head, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "There's no choice to make, Grandpa. It's always been you." Jake, sitting next to me, squeezed my other hand. "I support whatever Robin wants," he said. "She's told me about everything you've done for her, sir. I can't think of anyone better to give her away." Grandpa smiled, his eyes suspiciously moist. "Well then," he said, his voice gruff with emotion, "I guess we'd better start practicing our walk, hadn't we?" As we all laughed, I felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over me. This was my real family, the people who'd stood by me, supported me, loved me unconditionally. And in a few short weeks, I'd be adding Jake to that family officially. I thought I'd put an end to Mom's ridiculous demands, but apparently, I'd underestimated her determination. The calls kept coming, each one more insistent than the last. "Robin, you need to reconsider," Mom pleaded one evening. "Tom's really upset. If you don't let him walk you down the aisle, he might leave me." "Then maybe he's not the right guy for you," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "Look, I'm busy planning my wedding. Can we please drop this?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Mom spoke again, her voice was cold. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I won't come to your wedding at all." Something inside me snapped. "You know what? Fine. Don't come. It's not like you've been a real mother to me anyway." I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. Part of me felt guilty for lashing out, but a bigger part felt relieved. Like I'd finally said what I'd been holding back for years. Days passed, and I started to think maybe that was the end of it. Maybe Mom had finally gotten the message. I threw myself into wedding planning, grateful for the distraction. But then, about a week later, I was at work when my boss, Mr. Johnson, called me into his office. As soon as I walked in, I knew something was wrong. Mom was there, mascara streaking down her face, with Tom hovering behind her like a bodyguard. "Robin," Mom cried, throwing herself at me. "How could you be so cruel to your own mother?" I stood frozen, completely blindsided. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She turned to Mr. Johnson, who was watching the scene with wide eyes. "Mr. Johnson, you have to talk some sense into her. She's breaking her poor mother's heart." Mr. Johnson stammered, clearly out of his depth. Mom barreled on, gesturing wildly between herself and Tom. "She won't let her parents walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Can you believe it? After everything we've done for her. Please, make her listen to reason." Before anyone could say anything else, Mom grabbed Tom's arm and stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Johnson leaned back in his chair, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Robin, I think you owe me an explanation. What exactly is going on?" Haltingly, I began to explain about my childhood, about living with my grandparents, about Mom's revolving door of boyfriends. I told him about her insistence that Tom walk me down the aisle, and my refusal. To my surprise, Mr. Johnson's face softened as I spoke. When I finished, he let out a long sigh. "You know, Robin, your mother reminds me a lot of my ex-wife," he said, shaking his head. "I divorced her because of similar, dramatic tendencies. Always making everything about her, never considering how her actions affected others." Relief washed over me. "So, you understand?" He nodded. "I do. And I want you to know that I'm on your side here. Your wedding day is about you, not your mother or her boyfriend." I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I really appreciate that." However, he continued, his tone turning serious, "We can't have scenes like this at the office. It's unprofessional and disruptive. I need you to handle this situation, Robin. Make sure it doesn't happen again." As I left Mr. Johnson's office, relief gave way to anger. How dare Mom show up at my workplace like that? She could have cost me my job. My first stop was the security desk. I explained the situation to Dave, the head of security, showing him a picture of Mom and Tom on my phone. "These two are not to be allowed in the building under any circumstances," I said firmly. "If they show up, please call the police immediately." Back at my desk, I opened my email, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I typed out a message to Mom. "Mom, your behavior today was completely unacceptable. You had no right to show up at my workplace and cause a scene. You could have jeopardized my career with your selfish actions. I've tried to be patient with you, tried to explain my feelings, but you refused to listen. So let me be crystal clear, you are no longer invited to my wedding. Neither is Tom. I'm asking you, no, I'm telling you, to stay away from me. Don't call, don't email, don't show up at my work or my home. If you can't respect my boundaries, I'll have no choice but to take legal action. Robin." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then sat back, feeling drained but oddly liberated. That evening, I told Jake what had happened. He wrapped me in a tight hug. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," he said. "But I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." We called my grandparents and Jake's parents, explaining the situation. To my relief, they all supported my decision. As Jake and I went through our wedding guest list that night, crossing off Mom and Tom's names, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Our wedding would be smaller now, but it would be filled with people who truly loved and supported us. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, squeezing my hand. I looked at him, at the love and concern in his eyes, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "Yeah," I said, squeezing back. "I really am. And I meant it." For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control of my life, setting boundaries, and surrounding myself with people who genuinely cared about me. It wasn't how I'd imagined my wedding planning would go, but somehow, it felt right. The day I'd dreamed of for so long had finally arrived. I stood at the chapel doors, my heart fluttering with excitement. Grandpa, dapper in his tuxedo, squeezed my hand reassuringly. The music swelled, and we took our first step. But before we could even enter the chapel, a shrill voice cut through the air. "Stop right there." Mom came barreling down the aisle, Tom hot on her heels. She jabbed a finger at Grandpa. "You, move aside. Tom's walking Robin down the aisle." I couldn't believe it. After everything, she was still trying to make my wedding about her. "Mom, what are you doing here? You weren't invited. Please leave. Now." Mom's face crumpled, and the waterworks started. I'd seen this act too many times to be fooled. "How can you be so cruel? I raised you." I loved you after your father died. Grandpa, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Carol, that's enough. Everyone here knows the truth about who really raised Robin. I glanced around at our guests. Their faces showed a mix of shock, sympathy, and, was that a hint of amusement? Clearly, Mom's theatrics weren't winning her any fans. Mom must have noticed too, because her tactics suddenly changed. Fine, she spat. I don't need you, Robin. I have Tom. He appreciates me, unlike you. You've always been stupid and arrogant. I disown you. Before I could respond, Grandpa cut in, his voice cold. Well, Carol, if that's how you feel, then I have something to say too. You're no longer welcome in my house, yes, my house. And I'm writing you out of my will. The change in Tom's demeanor was instant and almost comical. He paled, taking a step back from Mom. Carol. Sorry, but I didn't sign up for all this drama. Plus, without the house and inheritance, well, let's just say, I think I'd be better off finding a younger girlfriend. We're done. Mom's face contorted with rage. She let out a wordless scream, grabbing at her hair. You're all against me. How dare you? I'll show you. Before she could finish her threat, 2 police officers who had been quietly called by one of the guests appeared at her side. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us, one of them said firmly. As they led Mom away, her shouts echoing through the chapel, I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and oddly enough, a bit of pity. This was rock bottom for her, and part of me hoped it might finally be the wake-up call she needed. 30 minutes later, after I'd had a chance to touch up my makeup and calm my nerves, I once again stood at the chapel doors with Grandpa. As we walked down the aisle, I saw Jake waiting for me at the altar, his face full of love and concern. Our eyes met, and suddenly, all the drama of the past hour faded away. This was our moment, and nothing, not even my mother's antics, could take that away from us. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with laughter and happy tears. And as Jake and I shared our first kiss as husband and wife, I knew that whatever challenges life threw our way, we'd face them together, surrounded by the love and support of our true family. During the reception, guest after guest approached us, offering words of support and condemning my mother's behavior. You handled that like a champ, Robin, my college roommate said, hugging me tight. Your mom's got some nerve, Jake's uncle grumbled. But you showed her what real class looks like. And as Jake and I drove off to start our honeymoon, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The drama with Mom was behind us now. We had a whole new life ahead of us, and I couldn't wait to see what adventures it would bring. It's been a year since the wedding, and life has settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. Jake and I live in a cozy apartment just a stone's throw from our offices. It's not huge, but it's ours, filled with love and laughter. Every morning, we walk to work together, hand in hand, talking about our plans for the future. The house where I grew up, the one Mom used to live in, now provides us with a steady stream of rental income. We've turned it into something positive, using the extra money to save for our future and occasionally splurge on weekend getaways. As for Mom, well, I hear things through the grapevine now and then. Apparently, she's renting a small apartment across town. And true to form, she's on the hunt for her next soulmate. Some things never change, I guess. I haven't spoken to her since the wedding. Sometimes I feel a twinge of guilt about that, but then I remember the years of chaos, the constant drama, the way she tried to hijack one of the most important days of my life. And I know I made the right choice. One sunny Saturday morning, as Jake and I are having breakfast on our tiny balcony, he asks, "Do you ever think about reaching out to your mom?" I take a sip of coffee, considering the question. Sometimes, I admit. But then I remember how peaceful our life is now, how drama-free. And I'm not ready to risk that. Jake nods, understanding. You know I'll support whatever you decide, right? I smile, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. I know. And that means everything to me. Later that day, we're walking through the park when we pass a mother and daughter having a picnic. They're laughing, heads close together, sharing some private joke. For a moment, I feel a pang of what might have been. But then I think about Grandma and Grandpa, who call every Sunday without fail. I think about Jake's parents, who have embraced me as a daughter. I think about our friends, who rallied around us during the wedding fiasco and have been our rock ever since. I realize that family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who stand by you, who support you, who love you unconditionally. And by that measure, I'm rich beyond my wildest dreams.
What? Come on. People will still make fun of you if you spend an additional year retaking the entrance examinations to gain admission to a prestigious university. The entire family will be made fun of if my son marries someone who has a brother who just completed middle school, regardless of how great she is as a lawyer. I get chills just thinking about it. Given Jessica's remarkable history, I thought you were from an affluent family and that both of your siblings had completed college after your parents passed away. I should have investigated her brother. The fact that he just completed middle school is very embarrassing. I was shocked to hear these remarks from the individuals who would soon become my sister's in-laws. I never thought such things could be said. The relatives of this family continued to harass and abuse me during the wedding celebration. I can hardly express how shocked I was to discover the nameplate on the table. The words "middle school graduate loser" were scribbled clumsily across it in red marker. Rachel, my assistant, was astounded when she saw it as well. She grumbled, "If these are the people running that clinic, maybe it wouldn't be such a loss if it went under." The groom's family initially laughed, but as soon as they found out who I was and where I was now, I could see that their faces became pale. I'm 37 years old, and my name is Kevin Turner. My father's friend owns the medical equipment business where I work. Jessica is the name of my sister. I'm currently traveling to her wedding celebration. The 27-year-old Jessica is getting married to Adam. After completing medical school, he is currently employed at a university hospital as a surgeon. After Jessica, a hospital corporate lawyer, successfully settled a case in which Adam was accused of medical misconduct, she started dating him. As their relationship developed rapidly, they made the decision to tie the knot. I'll be going to Mom and Dad's grave soon to tell them the news. Yes, that is a wise decision. I said, I believe it's the right thing to do. Recollections of everything that had happened since our parents died came flooding back to me as I spoke these words to Jessica. 20 years or so ago. A house fire claimed the lives of our parents. Jessica was still in elementary school at the time, and I was a sophomore in high school. Our lives were completely upended by the unexpected death of our parents. We lost our place to reside when the fire destroyed our house. We'd briefly lived with Sean, a friend of my father's, but before I graduated from high school, we made the decision to move into an apartment. Sean had offered to stay until I graduated, but I persisted since I didn't want to be dependent on him any longer. Sean did his best to convince me to at least complete high school, but after much consideration, I had already made up my mind. We were able to pay for living expenses for a while thanks to the funds our parents had given us and the insurance money we received. A man named Nathan referred me to a job, which is how I got my first employment. I still have a lot of gratitude for Nathan. It was difficult to live each day with the burden of losing our parents and constantly worrying about money, but I advised Jessica to stop thinking about money and to continue living her life as she had before, always attempting to keep things positive. She learned that I had left high school to work when she got to middle school. Is attending high school truly acceptable for me? You're already working after all. She began to suggest things like, after middle school, shouldn't I start working too? What are you discussing? Why do you suppose I'm at work? It is my duty to assist you in maturing. Naturally, it is my responsibility to take care of you as your big brother. Yes, but you're the only one making sacrifices, aren't you? I wonder if this is acceptable. Don't consider it a sacrifice. Everything is all right. All I want is for you to attend high school and graduate stress-free. In addition, Nathan helped me land a job that I truly love, and I wasn't that excellent in school anyhow. What? Really? So that I can attend high school after all? Obviously. You're quite intelligent. Please do your best in school and continue to be the proud little sister I know you are. I get it. Big brother, I'm also proud of you. Jessica then focused entirely on her studies and continued on to high school. She was always very dedicated to her studies and constantly placed at the top of her class, perhaps because she felt appreciative of me. Nevertheless, she appeared determined to get employment after graduation, most likely out of consideration for me. During the three-way discussion with her teacher to discuss her future plans, she firmly stated, "I'm going to get a job after I graduate from high school." Her teacher, Mr. Thompson, appeared somewhat taken aback. With grades like Jessica's, she could easily get into a university that grants tuition exemptions and scholarships. He urged her, adding, "I understand your financial situation." Like Mr. Thompson, I did. Don't stress over tuition. Why you insist so much? Isn't Mr. Thompson even providing assistance? Well, it's hard to know you're making sacrifices for me. Don't you have things you want to do? You're putting everything aside just to prioritize me. I can't be the only one who gets to finish high school and then go to college. And even with scholarships, they wouldn't cover everything. I'll cover whatever is missing. My performance at work is being recognized, and my salary is expected to go up soon, so covering your tuition won't be an issue. Look, don't think twice about it. If your grades were only good enough to get into a second-tier college, like mine were even after working hard, I wouldn't be saying all this. But with your current grades, you can get into a great university. That'll open up so many more opportunities for you. If it makes you feel better, we can treat whatever I cover as a loan. When you get a good job after graduating, then you can pay me back. Do you know how many years it would take me to get through college? You'd be living on a tight budget all that time. Are you really okay with that? Come on, we've supported each other since we lost Mom and Dad. There's no reason for you to hold back. If you're willing to go that far, then I'll go to college. Thank you. Really? Thank you, big brother. Though it took some persuasion, Jessica finally agreed to pursue further education. Seeing our conversation, Mr. Thompson discreetly dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief. Jessica declared she would aim for the law school at a prestigious university. It was one of the toughest programs in Japan to get into, but Jessica faced the pressure head-on and passed the entrance exams on her first try. She graduated with honors, never needing to repeat a course. While in university, she passed the preliminary legal exam and later the bar exam as well. She was so exceptional that I sometimes wondered if we were even related. Then she joined her current law firm during a summer clerkship, and after the exams, they offered her a position without hesitation. Now, Jessica is a highly successful attorney. At the time, I didn't understand why she wanted to become a lawyer. It turned out that seeing me struggle with legal paperwork after our parents passed away, and we lost our home, left her feeling helpless. She wanted to use her knowledge to help others in need, just like we had been. When I first learned of Jessica's motivation, I was truly moved by her thoughtfulness. If she hadn't gone to college, she wouldn't have become the lawyer she is today. I'm incredibly grateful to Mr. Thompson for encouraging her to continue her education, and I'm glad I convinced her. Adam, Jessica's fiancé, also knew about our history. It seems he was drawn to Jessica not only for her skills as a lawyer, but also for her sincerity, which led him to ask her out. I've heard a lot about you from Jessica, how you stepped in to protect her after your parents passed away. Oh please, protect is a bit much. We've simply helped each other along. I replied modestly, though I felt incredibly proud of the woman Jessica had become. I deeply wish for Jessica's happiness. With this marriage, I plan to celebrate it wholeheartedly. But reality can be harsh, and one concern weighed on me. I had the opportunity to meet Adam along with his parents for a formal introduction and face-to-face meeting. However, during that encounter, something happened that made me feel uneasy. The meeting took place at the restaurant of the hotel where the two of them planned to hold their wedding reception. Adam's father, Keith Knox, is also a doctor and runs his own clinic. He appeared to be in his early 60s, with his intelligent yet somewhat intense demeanor making him look every bit the part of a physician. I informed Mr. and Mrs. Knox that I was there on behalf of our late parents. I've heard about your parents from Adam. It must have been a challenging time for both of you. Yes, we did go through difficult times, but looking back now, it wasn't all bad. Oh my, such a mature perspective for someone so young. I'd expect nothing less from the brother of the accomplished Jessica. No, no. Jessica's always had it together compared to me. She's done so much better. She makes me look inadequate in comparison. I wasn't just being modest, I genuinely meant it. Jessica truly is the kind of sister where finding a flaw is nearly impossible. Even so, raising Jessica in place of your parents and supporting her through a top university, your own background must be quite impressive. Yes, surely that's the case. So, what do you do for a living now? I'm currently working at the company of a friend of my late father's. The moment I answered, the smiles on their faces vanished. And what kind of work do you do there? I mainly handle sales and distribution for medical equipment. Sales and distribution at a medical equipment company. If you don't mind me asking, which university did you attend? I didn't go to university. I joined my current company after dropping out of high school. What? Wait just a moment. When they said that, the two of them briefly glanced at Adam and Jessica, as if to observe their reactions. It was just the moment when Adam and Jessica were prompted by the venue staff to preview their wedding outfits, so they were about to head over there. Once the two had left, their expressions turned harsh, and they leaned toward me, closing the distance. Tell me, are you saying you didn't even graduate from high school? Yes, that's right. So you only have a middle school education? Yes. This is unbelievable. Had we known, we wouldn't have approved of this marriage. Indeed, even now, we should consider halting things and discuss this again as a family. Now hold on. The wedding date has already been announced. Calling it off now would be difficult. Besides, Jessica remains an ideal bride. Yes, she's not the problem here. Excuse me, but what exactly are you trying to say? Don't act like you don't know. You're a huge problem. Look, we run a clinic, and our entire family is well established. Many run businesses or hold senior positions in large corporations. Every single one of them attended a reputable university. It's a basic expectation. Ha, I see. You say that response is just so lacking. Don't you understand what we're getting at? I knew they weren't happy with my educational background, but their abrupt change in attitude left me too stunned to respond properly. In our family, it's considered shameful if someone even has to repeat a year to get into a good university. You probably don't understand, but having a questionable academic record is already a disgrace. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. Let me be clear. Even someone who has to retake exams to get into a top school would be laughed at if people knew our son married a woman with a middle school graduate brother. Just the thought of the ridicule makes me shudder. I'd assumed you came from a wealthy family and that both siblings would have attended university. Even after losing your parents, I thought Jessica's impeccable background made it unnecessary to investigate you. I never expected, never even imagined, you be a middle school graduate. It's truly embarrassing. The words were so humiliating I was left speechless. Still, with things this far along, in that case, we'll inform the family that Jessica and you are only nominally related, a mere formality. You must promise never to claim you raised her in place of your parents. Do you understand? What? Excuse me? I replied, stunned. Don't act so resistant. People like you, once part of the family, always find ways to beg for money or sneak into inheritance plans. I'm sure you'd do something like that. Exactly. Listen closely. This is a warning. You will not loiter around Jessica, nor will you bring up loans or investments to us. I expect you to promise this here and now. If you don't, we'll cut ties immediately or, better yet, have our lawyer ensure you can't get near us. This isn't a threat. Do you understand? I couldn't believe these words were coming from Jessica's future in-laws. I'd never experienced such an insulting encounter. I barely managed to hold back my anger and remained there quietly. If I let Jessica know the humiliation I just endured, it might disrupt her relationship with Adam. They're a perfect match, and the last thing I wanted was for their relationship to fall apart. There's no need to worry. I won't ask you or Jessica for any money in any form, now or ever. Poof. We'll remember you said that. Any suspicious behavior, and we won't hesitate to take action. But there's one thing I must make clear. Jessica and I have supported each other all these years. No matter your request, I won't cut ties with her. I'm not going to stop seeing her, and I won't compromise on that. What an outrage. This is nothing short of harassment. You should contact a lawyer right away. Mrs. Knox spat angrily. Just as Mrs. Knox was about to berate me further, Adam and Jessica returned after checking their wedding attire. The Knoxes instantly put on cheerful expressions, as if nothing had happened. From that point on, both the Knoxes and I maintained our composure in front of the couple, somehow getting through the interaction. Until the day of the wedding reception, I naturally didn't have any more encounters with the Knoxes. I hadn't shared a word with Jessica about what had transpired that day. However, I had told the woman accompanying me to the reception, Rachel, about it. Rachel is an important partner to me, both personally and professionally. We plan to marry soon, and she's close to Jessica as well. Jessica had also invited her, so she was attending the reception with me. At first, I hadn't intended to tell anyone about the humiliation I experienced with the Knoxes, but Rachel quickly sensed something weighing on me. Deep down, I think I wanted someone to listen, so I ended up confiding in her. So today's the day you're going to put those horribly rude in-laws in their place, right? Rachel asked, grinning. What? No way. If I did that, it would ruin the ceremony. Besides, I'm not interested in taking any action that would disrupt the day, regardless of what's happened. Oh, what a shame. I thought you brought me along as backup for just that reason. Come on, this isn't some showdown. Ah, boring. Well, it didn't insult me directly, but it still ticks me off. Still, it's Jessica's big day, so I won't do anything too wild. Maybe I was too hasty in sharing this with you, I said, laughing. We looked at each other and laughed. Rachel's fiery spirit sometimes threw me off, but more often than not, she had my back. Having her by my side gave me a sense of security in many ways. When we arrived at the venue, we began looking for the seats reserved for the bride's family. Since Adam is a doctor and Jessica a lawyer, the wedding was extravagant, with many guests in attendance. Even from across the room, I quickly spotted the Knoxes seated at the far end of the groom's family section. I made sure to avoid direct eye contact with them to prevent any unnecessary confrontation. There they are at the far end. They're looking over here with the most spiteful smiles, Rachel informed me, keeping an eye on the Knoxes. Figures. Well, if all I have to endure are a few laughs from them, that's fine. The most important thing today is celebrating Jessica and Adam. I don't want to waste a thought on anything trivial. With that, we found Rachel's seat first. Then I looked at the nameplate on the seat beside hers, where I assumed mine would be. What? My mind went blank. Where my name should have been written, there was no sign of it. Instead, scrawled messily in red marker were the words, "Middle school graduate loser." No one but the Knoxes could have pulled off a childish prank like this. I instinctively shot a glare toward the groom's family section. The Knoxes, along with a few nearby family members, were watching me and bursting into laughter. Clearly, my academic background had become a source of amusement among the relatives. The Knoxes must have set this up in advance, informing everyone and watching to see my reaction as I discovered the nameplate. Their sense of humor was truly revolting. Seeing me freeze momentarily upon reading those words only seemed to make them laugh harder. Mrs. Knox was even clapping her hands in delight, laughing openly. What awful people. But with the venue bustling with lively conversations and the occasional cheer, no one else seemed to notice the scene at their table. I decided to leave without taking my seat. If I sat there quietly, they'd continue laughing at me endlessly. And who knows, this might just be the start, with more insults lined up. As much as I regretted it, I couldn't endure any more humiliation. However, Rachel quickly came after me, grabbing my arm to stop me. You've been holding back all this time just to celebrate Jessica and Adam today, right? Don't forget how Jessica would feel if she noticed you weren't there. Yeah, you're right. If I was going to get angry, I should have done it the first time they insulted me. I promised myself I'd hold it in for Jessica and Adam, but I was about to totally lose it. If you hadn't been here, I'd have stormed out by now. Thank you. Ignoring the sneers and finger-pointing from the Knoxes, I focused back on the celebration. Before long, the bride and groom, our main stars, entered the room to enthusiastic applause. The guest speeches began soon after, starting with Dr. Smith, the director of Adam's hospital, and then Miss Taylor, the head of Jessica's law firm. We also heard from friends and the groom's family members. But then, as all the speeches finished, I realized my turn had never come. Jessica had asked me to give a speech, and I prepared it with my whole heart. Even though the groom's family speeches had concluded, none of the staff had come to let me know it was my turn. When I checked with one of the nearby staff, they gave me a surprising response. After confirming, it appeared that just before the ceremony began, one of the groom's family members requested that the bride's family representative's speech be canceled, stating it wasn't prepared. So it was removed from the schedule. I turned my gaze back to the Knoxes. Sure enough, they were whispering to each other, laughing quietly while looking my way. I'd reached my limit. I moved along the wall, trying not to interrupt anything, making my way over to where the Knoxes were. Rachel followed me silently. The Knoxes looked at me with eyes full of disdain. What on earth are you trying to pull, huh? What are you talking about? I think the question is better asked of you. Do you really not remember what I told you the other day? What? Just what are you talking about? Oh, really? Have you forgotten already, or do you just lack the understanding? If so, that's truly unfortunate. They waved their hands as if brushing me off. What do you think you're doing, canceling my speech like that? Don't be ridiculous. The fact that you'd even consider speaking is absurd. Once we realized you intended to go through with it, we had no choice but to take proper measures. Having an uneducated man speak at my son's wedding would be a lifelong embarrassment. We're simply doing what any responsible parents would do. Around us, I noticed some of the groom's family stifling laughs. And what right do you have to insult me? Did you really think you could be treated as an equal? Know your place, you worthless fool. Don't talk to me again. I'll be handling this legally. If you approach us or our family again, we'll make sure you pay for it. Keep that in mind. As I trembled with anger, barely holding back a shout, Rachel, who had been watching silently, finally spoke. Mr. Turner, I never imagined they'd be so rude. I'm truly shocked. I don't think you need to hold back any more about the clinic's future business. And who are you to interfere in family matters? Oh, I was merely giving Mr. Turner my business opinion. Excuse me, Mr. Turner. Who you think you're talking about? I wasn't speaking to you. This is between Mr. Kevin Turner and myself. Please don't trouble yourself with our conversation. What? Mr. Kevin Turner? Yes, the man standing before you is the president, Mr. Kevin Turner. Oh, so he's some small-town company president now? And what does this grand president plan to do? Rachel pulled up the company president greeting page on her phone and handed it to Keith. At first, Keith looked at it reluctantly, with a hint of skepticism in his eyes. But then his expression suddenly tightened. Honey, what's wrong? Isn't this the medical equipment company our clinic works with? No way. I'm not falling for such a lousy joke. That's fine. After all, this is just my phone. Why don't you check on your own device? Flustered, he pulled out his own phone and quickly found my company's page. As he reached the president's introduction with my picture, his face turned pale. No, this has to be some kind of trick. With that, Keith stood up, turned his back to us for a moment, and seemed to start talking to someone on his phone. He was likely calling someone at his clinic to confirm if what we said was true. Last month, I had taken on the role of president of this company at the request of a friend of my father's. I had only recently stepped into this position. The daughter of my father's friend is Rachel. This friend, to whom I owe a great debt, had been in poor health for a while and had decided to pass the company to his daughter. He also expressed his wish for me and Rachel to marry. It's been nearly 20 years since I, a middle school graduate, started working at this company. Now, I know more about the inner workings here than anyone else. He said he couldn't imagine entrusting his daughter to anyone else but me. I proposed to Rachel, and we decided to marry, determined to build up the company together. Now Rachel and I are essential partners both in life and business. While her official title is secretary, she is, in effect, my co-manager. Her influence in the company is as strong as mine as president. With Rachel speaking so decisively, I knew our company could end its contract with the clinic at any time. The immediate cessation of business with the clinic won't impact our company. Very well. Let's proceed with that right away. Wait. You don't need to decide something so crucial here on the spot, do you? Let's take a moment to talk things over calmly. Oh, that's odd. Weren't you the one who said any further discussions would have to go through lawyers and that I'd be liable if I spoke too hastily? I'd be too terrified to answer lightly. Well, how impudent. Mr. Turner has said he doesn't want to supply products to a clinic run by people like you. Feel free to reject our business if you prefer. Well, I have never heard such rude words from a woman. She's like a monster. A monster. I think you're the far scarier ones here. My goodness. Say something to them, will you? Enough. You stay out of this. You're only complicating things, Keith said, holding his head in his hands. Lost deep in thought, he kept shifting his gaze back and forth between me and his family members, genuinely torn between preserving his clinic's success and upholding his family's honor. I couldn't understand the concept of preserving family pride to such an extent. This just won't do. The fact that you're a middle school graduate is unacceptable. Our family prides itself on being highly educated. But could we renegotiate the terms to continue the deal? We'd even pay extra for the equipment if we could keep doing business. If we lose this contract, it would be a real issue for us. After all, finding a new business partner isn't easy for either of us, right? Don't you agree? I heard Rachel sigh deeply. This conversation is over. After delivering our current products, we'll be terminating our business relationship with your clinic. You're free to find other suppliers for your medical equipment needs. What? I'm offering this after all, but that's your response. And from someone who didn't even finish high school. There was no hope here. Exasperated, I turned away without a word. In that instant, he snapped. You bastard, he yelled, lunging at me from behind. Caught off guard, I lost my balance and leaned back. It was at that moment. What are you doing? I looked back to see that Rachel had deftly blocked his hand, knocked him off balance with a sweep of her leg, and sent him sprawling to the floor. The room fell silent as people turned to see what had happened, but Rachel calmly explained to the staff that he'd stumbled in his drunken state. Looking over to the relatives' table, I saw the groom's family wide-eyed and silent, watching us without a word. I turned and returned to my seat. Rachel sat next to me, looking as if nothing had happened. The ceremony continued smoothly from there. The staff graciously arranged a last-minute slot for me to give my speech near the end of the event, and the room filled with applause. Seeing the bride and groom's happy faces filled me with emotion. That was such a heartfelt and beautiful speech. It truly showed how much you care for Jessica. Thank you so much for today. I was genuinely grateful to have shared this day with Rachel. A few days after the wedding, our company officially terminated its contract with his clinic. While the clinic may now struggle with equipment shortages that affect patient care, it's no longer my concern. When Adam learned the truth, he came to me in tears, apologizing for his parents' rudeness. I assured him I had no intention of making a big deal of the matter and that things between us wouldn't change. Relieved, he went home. Later, however, I heard from my sister that he'd severed ties with his family. With Jessica's support, he'd taken legal steps to ensure that any contact from his family would incur penalties. He'd learned from his relatives' own overuse of legal threats and swiftly turned the tables on them. To be honest, I was truly relieved. I believed that Jessica and her husband cutting ties with those relatives was for the best. Next up is you two. Yes, You and Rachel deserve happiness too. Big brother. Right? I can't wait to see Rachel as a bride. She's going to look stunning. Lately, I've been getting more and more gentle nudges from my sister and her husband, urging me to marry Rachel. Rachel and I exchanged a smile, saying, "One of these days." Grateful for this happiness, I threw myself into my work with renewed dedication.
On the day of the company retreat, as I arrived at the airport, my boss, Brown, hit me with some unbelievable news. "You're not going to believe this, I forgot your ticket." Brown sneered with a nasty grin, declaring loudly. At his words, the other Ivy League-educated employees around us burst into raucous laughter. I had endured Brown's petty harassments before, but to face such malice during a company event like the retreat was too much. Reaching my breaking point, I decided to confront the accumulated anger. "Since my flight ticket wasn't arranged, I'm canceling my trip." All Brown and his group did was laugh uproariously at my words. But soon, they would have to face the consequences of their actions. My name is Sam Smith. I'm a 38-year-old who works for a building maintenance company. I joined this company 5 years ago and have been doing well in my job since then. The company has been established for 50 years and has a rich track record. Our company, a mid-sized business, takes on everything from office buildings and luxury resort hotels to large-scale commercial complexes. We pride ourselves on our sophisticated cleaning techniques and manners, honed in upscale resort hotels. As a member of this distinguished company, I have always strived to work harder than anyone else. However, my peaceful days were soon overturned by my new boss, John Brown. Despite being younger than me at 35, Brown is an elite employee who graduated from a prestigious university and already holds the title of department head. Yet, for some reason, I found myself subjected to his daily harassment. "Isn't it irresponsible to be hopping from job to job? What exactly did you do to get kicked out of your previous company?" Brown, who values job titles highly, was merciless in his terrible attitude towards me, despite being younger and holding a lower position. It wasn't just Brown who looked down on me as a third-rate university graduate. His followers did the same. His subordinates, who graduated from universities as renowned as his, also ridiculed me similarly. Brown would dump a massive amount of work on me just before quitting time and fail to inform me about changes to meeting schedules, executing these petty harassments daily. Yet, there's a reason why I continued to show up for work and didn't quit the company. One reason is my grandmother. "I'm sorry for being a burden on you." That's not true. Who else has raised me up to now if not you, Grandma? I live with my grandmother, who is my only family member. My parents died in an accident when I was a child, and I was raised by my grandparents. My grandparents were the ones who took care of me when I was still in elementary school and ensured I could go on to college. Just as I started living alone and thought I could finally repay them for their kindness, my grandfather passed away due to illness. That's when I decided to move in with my grandmother, who was left alone, and returned to the nostalgic home of my grandparents. During the few years I was away, my grandmother's knees had deteriorated significantly, making it difficult for her to move around. I relied on a caregiver during the day and tried my best to manage life with my grandmother, keeping in touch throughout. I couldn't quit my job, so inevitably, there were times when my grandmother had to be alone. But it seemed she enjoyed her time, getting along well with the caregiver, although she probably acted cheerful to avoid worrying me. Just seeing my grandmother's bright smile gives me the strength to persevere at work. One day, during a morning assembly, Brown addressed all employees. "In 3 months, we're planning a company retreat. Would anyone like to volunteer to organize it?" While saying anyone, Brown's gaze was fixed on me. The workplace was already busy enough. Becoming the organizer for the retreat would mean dealing with various tedious tasks, which would undoubtedly impede my main responsibilities. Apparently, No one had volunteered yet, and finally, Brown, the department head, was personally soliciting volunteers. The other employees looked apologetic, glancing between me and Brown. Throughout, Brown kept his gaze fixed on me, waiting for my response. Having no choice, I steeled myself and decided to take on the role of organizing the company retreat. Gathering everyone together could deepen our bonds. This could also be a chance to improve my relationship with Brown. With that in mind, I began to actively develop the plan. A few days later, Brown came to my desk with a smirk and asked, "How's the planning for the retreat going?" "It's going well. Fortunately, I've been to the proposed location a few times, so I'm working hard to ensure everyone will enjoy the trip," I replied, showing Brown the hotel we would stay at and the route there. However, Brown frowned displeasedly at my answer. "You've been there before. That area is a famous vacation spot, and this is a luxury hotel, isn't it? I stayed here a few years ago. It's a really nice hotel, and I thought it would be great for everyone to experience it," I explained politely, but Brown did not try to hide his annoyance. "Don't try to show off. You're just an employee without a position from a third-rate college. That's not the kind of hotel you could afford." "No, it's not about showing off. I went there with my grandmother," I replied. Brown's condescending attitude really infuriates me, but I carefully repeat my explanation. However, far from being convinced, Brown began to laugh upon hearing my answer. "Are you saying your grandma took you there? With your salary as a perpetual entry-level employee due to your job hopping, you couldn't afford such a luxury hotel?" Brown ridicules me based on his own assumptions, without any intent to understand the reasons behind my job changes. I believe a person's worth isn't solely determined by career advancement, but since Brown is my boss, I hesitated to talk back. After being teased relentlessly, I finally managed to get back to work, but my mood was far from good. "I'm home. Are you okay? You seem a bit down." Upon returning home in a sour mood, my grandmother greeted me with her usual smile. However, she seemed worried seeing my gloomy demeanor. The things Brown said were part of the reason I felt down. But I was also struggling with how to tell my grandmother about the company retreat. Participating in the retreat would mean leaving her alone at home. I could arrange for a caregiver during the day, but I had always taken care of her at night. If I were to leave, I'd need to find someone to take my place. In a normal family, I might ask other relatives for help, but it's just my grandmother and me. We have no other family. I usually try not to think about it, but in emergencies like these, the reality of having no one to rely on weighs heavily on me. Actually, the company has planned a trip. "That's wonderful. Have a great time." My grandmother said it so casually that I was taken aback. Then, sensing my worry, she laughed lightly and continued, "Don't worry about me. I don't have any relatives, but I get along well with Mrs. White next door, don't I?" "Grandma." Her casual words reassured me, and I felt a wave of relief. "So don't worry about me. Just go and enjoy the retreat. Mrs. White is a slightly younger lady who frequents our house, and they are good friends. It seems my grandmother might even stay over at her place on the day." "Thank you, Grandma." "It's okay, you always work so hard, so take some time to relax and enjoy yourself." Thanks to my grandmother, I felt much more at ease and spent the night chatting happily with her about the retreat. Later, my planning went smoothly, and it was settled that we would stay at the upscale hotel I recommended for 2 nights and 3 days. We're also planning to visit local tourist spots, and I've arranged a retreat rich in quality and volume to reward our employees for their constant hard work. Seeing the employees' eyes light up as they looked through the materials I distributed made me feel that all my efforts were worthwhile. Being able to contribute to the company through this trip I organized was an immense honor. At that moment, the executive vice president, who was at the office, called me over. "Good job on arranging the retreat. Have you also handled the flight tickets? It would be a mess if you got so caught up in planning that you forgot to buy the return tickets. Yes, I've already booked the flight tickets and hotel reservations for all employees attending the retreat, I said, showing him the confirmation email. But it looks like the count is off. Aren't we missing one ticket? What? I purchased tickets for all the attendees. I'll check right away. I quickly turned back to my computer screen to review the purchase history. As I checked each name against the documents, I realized something and my face turned red. I'm sorry, I forgot to book my own flight ticket. At my response, the executive vice president burst out laughing. The other employees, who had been concerned, also started laughing heartily. You worked so hard on the plan and forgot to count yourself. It's commendable to prioritize the other employees. But make sure you include yourself too. Teased by the executive vice president, the office erupted in warm laughter. However, not everyone was smiling. It was Brown and his followers, the employees who graduated from prestigious universities. Hey, watch it. It's a good thing the executive noticed, or your mistake could have caused chaos on the day. You're right, I'm sorry. As I hung my head in front of Brown, the executive interceded. Now, give him a break, Director Brown. It's good that we noticed it beforehand. Brown grimaced, but the executive continued. Now that the reservations are complete. Next, we need to purchase the tickets, and I'm thinking of asking Director Brown to handle it. How about that? Asked directly by the executive, Brown, still looking displeased, reluctantly nodded his head. Brown practically snatched the reservation documents from me and quickly left the office. At that moment, I had a bad feeling, but I shook my head vigorously to dismiss the ominous thought. I couldn't imagine. Not even Brown would sabotage a company event like the retreat, or so I thought. But that was a lapse on my part, as I would later learn the hard way. On the day of the retreat, with my suitcase packed tightly, I said goodbye to my grandmother. Take care and enjoy the retreat, she told me. Thank you, Grandma, Mrs. White. Please take good care of her, I said, bowing gratefully to Mrs. White, who had kindly agreed to look after my grandmother. Then, I hurried off to the airport, eager to ensure everyone enjoyed the retreat I had planned. Thinking about relaxing and having fun myself over the next 3 days lifted my spirits. When I arrived at the airport by taxi, several colleagues were already there. Manager Brown is handing out the plane tickets. You should go get yours too, Smith, one advised. Thanks, I will, I replied and started looking for Brown. I spotted him a short distance away, laughing and chatting merrily with his group of prestigious university graduate followers. As I approached, they noticed me and abruptly stopped talking. Good morning, Manager Brown. May I have my plane ticket as well? I asked. Their stares were piercing as they looked at me. I was wondering what everyone suddenly fell silent when I heard something unbelievable next. Plane tickets, sorry, I forgot yours, Brown said with a sneering grin, loudly enough for everyone to hear. At his words, the other employees from prestigious universities burst into laughter, some even tearing up from laughing too hard. Brown joined in, doubling over with laughter. That's hilarious. Sorry, I just forgot to buy it. But you weren't on the reservation list anyway, so you weren't looking forward to the trip, right? No big deal then. Brown tried to justify himself by blaming my mistake, acting as if he did nothing wrong. But seeing his unremorseful demeanor, it was clear to me he had intentionally not purchased my ticket from the start. To think a supervisor would go this far in harassing someone during a company event. I was beyond shocked. I felt an indescribable rage. I had endured Brown's petty harassment before, but it seemed I had reached my breaking point without realizing it. Faced with his continued malice, I finally unleashed my pent-up anger. Understood. Since you haven't arranged a ticket for me, I'm canceling the trip, I declared. Cancel, don't be childish. The retreat starts today, you know. Just buy a ticket at the counter if you need to. Brown said arrogantly, crossing his arms, but I glared back, filled with anger. Despite the company paying for the tickets, who would really go out of their way to buy one at their own expense? Even if I bought a ticket now and got on the plane, the retreat would still continue after today. Given what's happened just on the first day, Brown and his cronies will undoubtedly keep harassing me during the trip. They probably plan to watch me struggle and fail, enjoying my discomfort just like they are now, laughing at me. Indeed, Brown, with his smug expression, must be thinking just that. The best action I could take then was not to participate in the retreat at all. Why I made this choice will soon become apparent. I hadn't given up on fighting back against Brown. Rather, I was feigning resignation to catch him off guard. I do not intend to purchase a ticket on the day to join the retreat. Now that I realize how much Director Brown and his team despise me, I think it's best I step back entirely. I declared calmly. Brown and his group stared at me, dumbfounded. They probably expected me to panic and desperately try to join the trip. I thought you were looking forward to the retreat, but you seem okay with missing it. But don't worry. We'll make sure to enjoy ourselves on your behalf. Brown taunted. At Brown's words, his previously stunned cronies burst into laughter as if revived. Why don't you just go home quietly and take care of your precious grandma while we're enjoying the trip? Maybe you should just switch to a career in caregiving. Brown mocked, triggering another uproar of laughter. The noise of grown adults laughing uproariously was so disruptive that other passengers at the airport frowned and looked our way. Yet Brown and his group, seemingly oblivious to the annoyed glances, didn't stop their laughter. Embarrassed by their disgraceful behavior, I couldn't stand to stay another second. Since the executive vice president hasn't arrived yet, please inform him that I've canceled, excuse me. I said. What a shame. Get going then. Brown called out, laughing again with his group as I left the airport. Pulling my suitcase, I returned home, dropped off my luggage, and then went to visit Mrs. White next door. She was quite surprised to see me back so soon and looked concerned. What, weren't you supposed to be heading to the retreat? Well, I felt unwell and had to come back. I explained. As soon as I mentioned feeling sick, Mrs. White became very worried. That's terrible. You should lie down right away, she said, showing genuine concern. My grandmother was equally concerned about my health. Oh dear, that's awful. Should I prepare something easy to digest? Can you eat some rice porridge? She asked, starting to prepare to nurse me back to health. Being worried over by my grandmother and Mrs. White, I felt the tension easing from my heart. Thinking about these kind people around me made the harsh treatment from the director fade away. But that's exactly why I couldn't bring myself to tell them that I wasn't really ill. I didn't want to confess in front of my grandmother that I had returned because I couldn't endure the harassment from my boss, Director Brown. But the biggest reason was that I didn't want to cause him any unnecessary worry. Suddenly, I checked my watch. It was about time for the retreat group to be arriving at the hotel. I wondered what Brown and the others were up to now. Thinking this, I walked home with my grandmother. And while hidden from the concerned eyes of my grandmother and Mrs. White, I secretly smiled. The thought of what Brown might be doing right now naturally brought a smile to my face. The rest of the story I learned later from a colleague. Shortly after I returned home, the executive vice president arrived at the airport and looked around, asking, what happened to Smith? Why isn't he joining the retreat? Brown, pretending to be clueless, replied nonchalantly. Smith said he suddenly felt ill and went home. It's such a shame. He was looking forward to it so much. I hope he's okay, but now everyone is here. The executive vice president conducted a head count and then, following his instructions, everyone boarded the plane one after another. The plane arrived at the destination as scheduled. After enjoying a tour of the tourist spots, it was finally time to move to the upscale hotel. Overwhelmed by the grandeur of the building, the employees looked up at the hotel in awe. Having enjoyed the attractions during the day, their anticipation for the luxurious accommodations only grew. This upscale hotel was booked by Smith. If we mention his name, things should go smoothly, the executive vice president said, and took Brown with him to the reception. When Brown announced the company name, the front desk clerk paused thoughtfully before looking up. "We'll need to verify the reservation. If any of you have a membership card, please present it," the clerk requested. "Membership card? What are you talking about?" The executive vice president and Brown were puzzled. "The hotel accepts reservations from members only. If you are a group, as long as a group leader presents a membership card, everyone can stay," the clerk explained. "The person who made the reservation fell ill and isn't participating. It was booked under the name Smith. The rooms should be prepared," Brown asserted, presenting the accommodation tickets I had prepared at the front desk. But the front desk clerk frowned in concern and repeated, "The reservation has been made, but where is Mr. Smith himself? Without presenting a membership card, you cannot stay at our hotel." As Brown began to raise his voice in panic, the president happened to appear in the lobby. "Ah, you finally arrived. I came ahead of everyone. Relax and unwind from the day's fatigue at this hotel," said the president. "But we've made the reservation. Yet they say we can't stay without a membership card," the executive vice president quickly explained the situation. The president, surprised, raised his eyebrows. "Why would that be? If the reservation was made, there should be a membership card," he said. "The employee who handled the reservation fell ill and isn't here," the executive vice president responded. At that answer, the president's expression turned stern. He glanced sharply around at the employees and spoke out. "Come to think of it, I haven't seen his face around. Where did the new president go?" Just then, as I was relaxing at home, my cell phone started ringing. Suppressing a laugh at the predictable unfolding of events, I pressed a call button, and Brown's frantic voice came through. "What's going on? Why are you the new president?" And in the background, it sounded like the president was questioning Brown. "You're Smith's supervisor, aren't you? I have heard quite a bit about your conduct from him. Let's have a detailed discussion about it, shall we?" "There are circumstances," Brown mumbled, trying to be vague, but the president pressed him sharply. "You've been using your position as director to excessively burden a specific subordinate with work. And this time, you intentionally didn't purchase a plane ticket for Mr. Smith to harass him, didn't you?" "No, I was just trying to teach Smith a lesson. He's the type to irresponsibly job hopper, and I was merely trying to toughen him up." Brown sweatily made his excuses, but that only angered the president more. Mr. Smith is not an incompetent person. His job changes were to acquire a broad range of knowledge and develop the skills to manage this company. The company management. So, is Smith really the new president?" Brown asked, his face turning pale. The president nodded firmly. "Actually, my late father was the previous president of this company. And today, at the retreat, I was supposed to be introduced as the new president. With my father's sudden absence, the then vice president had taken over as president temporarily until now. I have grown up and gained experience across various industries, and now was the time decided for a leadership transition. Additionally, the upscale hotel we reserved was managed by a longtime friend of my grandmother. My grandmother, whose knees have worsened recently, hadn't been able to visit the hotel for a while. So, when I mentioned using it for the company retreat, they were happy to prepare rooms for us, but unfortunately, this was the result." On the other end of the phone, Brown was still mumbling incoherent excuses. However, I had already reported to the president about Brown's tyrannical behavior and selfish work attitude. Therefore, no matter how much he tried to excuse himself or lie, the president was not deceived. Eventually, over the phone, I confirmed the details, and the group was able to stay at the hotel. The other employees, unaware of the commotion, apparently enjoyed the rest of the retreat. But Brown received a severe reprimand from both the president and the executive vice president after the facts about deliberately not buying other employees plane tickets and persistently harassing me came to light, leading to disciplinary action against him. Brown was demoted to a section manager position and transferred to a regional branch office. The branch manager there is known to be very strict, and Brown is reportedly being rigorously trained every day. On his last day at the office, Brown came to my desk and bowed deeply. "I'm sorry for taking out my frustrations on you like that. I was feeling the pressure of being a young director, and seeing someone older than me enjoying their work made me resentful," he confessed. It seems that Brown, who always appeared so confident, was actually desperately coping with the heavy responsibility of being a director. He found it difficult to keep up with the demanding job to improve department performance and couldn't seek help due to his pride as an Ivy League graduate. In those difficult days, what caught his eye was me, seemingly enjoying my work. He was frustrated that I, being both older and his subordinate, didn't offer him the help he needed. He kept piling work on me, trying to crush me, but I handled it effortlessly and continued to enjoy my work, which only made him angrier. Eventually, it wasn't about escaping the hardship of the job anymore. It became about how to make you suffer. It's not something that can be forgiven with an apology, but I truly am sorry," he said before leaving the company. "I hope this incident leads to genuine reflection, and from now on, no one uses their position or educational background to look down on others and harass them." The followers who joined him in harassing me were each given a stern warning and a salary cut. Without Brown as their leader, their unity crumbled like sand, and they quickly fell apart. Now, all of those followers are seriously reflecting on their past actions and dedicating themselves to their work. Meanwhile, I officially took over as the new president of the company and am striving every day. I advocated for cooperation among employees as a company philosophy. No matter how challenging the work, if we collaborate, we will surely find a way through. Now, this approach is endorsed by the staff, and everyone is working hard while supporting each other. Despite the recent change in leadership, this has earned us the trust of our customers and a high reputation within the industry. Having been helped by various people like my grandmother and the former president, it's now my turn to give back. Hoping for the continued growth of the company, I review new documents. I'm hoping to continue growing and take the employees back to that hotel for another retreat next year.